Hello, everyone. My name is Shakiba Shayani, President and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and I will be the moderator for today. As a leading voice of business, the Guelph Chamber is pleased to be hosting this municipal election question and answer session. Thank you to the candidates for joining us today. Before we jump in, I'd like to acknowledge that Guelph is on treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples. During our region's rich Indigenous history, these lands have been home to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Métis. We express gratitude for the sharing of these lands, and we acknowledge the tragic history between Indigenous peoples and settlers. Indigenous peoples governed themselves for thousands of years before settlers arrived in Canada. Each First Nation, for example, had its own ways of making decisions based on community needs and values. Many of these distinct ways of governance continue today, and the lessons of community needs-based governance are principles we could all learn from. At the Guelph Chamber, we continue to play an important role in bringing together business and community leaders to advocate to all levels of government for policies and leadership that enhance the social and economic prosperity of our city, including through discussions like this one. So now I'd like to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order of last name. When I call your name, please tell us about yourself and why you believe you are the best candidate to represent Ward 4. So first we begin with Christine Billings.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. My education and life experience is in business management. I also have significant council, board, and committee experience, including Guelph General Hospital, Public Health, GRCA, and Guelph Police Services, just to name a few. So why do I want to be a Ward 4 councillor? Because I would like to continue working with and helping my constituents resolve their issues and concerns. This has been the most enjoyable and rewarding time for me while on council. I also care about the city, its residents, and our businesses that need to be competitive, especially in these economic times. The city is facing massive proposed tax increases, and this is unacceptable. The new term of council must deal with the situation and reprioritize to get the city's financial outlook under control. I have the knowledge, skills, and experience to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to Linda Busatil.
Thank you, Shakiba. My name is Linda Busatil. I'm an immigrant from Malta in Italy. I'm a parent and very active community volunteer in the city and Ward 4 where our family lives. My background includes grad studies in planning and regional economic development. I have many years of work with sector councils and firms throughout Western Ontario. My strength is labor force development and adjustment. I've run the past 4 elections for the role of school board trustee with the Upper Grand District School Board. I'm the chair of the board, and I have been a public servant for 16 years and served on local and provincial policy and other provincial committees. At the grassroots, I lead the West Village Community Development Cooperative, and the why I'm running is for action on affordability and accountability. Thank you, Shakiba.
Thank you. To you, Brendan Clark.
Thanks, Shakiba. I'm Brendan. I live here in Ward 4 with my fiance and my 2 boys, ages 3 and 3 weeks. I lived in Guelph my entire life. 22 of those 28 years have been in the West End. I'm running for council because I believe that Guelph is a great city, but it's become increasingly less affordable for both residents and businesses. My wife and I own a construction company here in Guelph, and we see the toll the last 4 years have taken on residents and businesses. We are promised fiscal responsibility on council, and in turn, we're given a $65 million vanity project in the library. This has caused property taxes for both residents and businesses to skyrocket to be some of the highest in the province. I want to work with not only residents, but also fellow businesses to proactively find out what the city can do to support you over the next 4 years and beyond. A vote for me will be a vote for fiscal responsibility, accountability, and proactive engagement on City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. To you, Hitesh Jagad.
Thank you, Shakiba. Myself is Hitesh Jagad, and we have a small business in town named Kritida Kitchen, and we have business for about 3.5 years. And I am a proud resident of the Guelph and have lived in Ward 4 for 18 years. I am running because I want to represent the priorities that matter most to the Gulf cities. Example includes creating and funding more support and affordable housing projects, better alternatives to control property taxes, and managing rising renting costs. Throughout the 18 years of living in Ward 4, I have seen considerable growth in road safety, in traffic, carbon emissions. With this, I want to advocate better road safety, especially residential areas, developing safer bike lanes, better establishment for the public transportation system. This will encourage people to seek a better alternatives, reduce traffic and carbon emissions. I will continue to advocate for more green sustainable growth, ensuring overall well-being of Ward 4 residents and make sure how the tax dollar spent on city budget while funding the projects. I am local entrepreneur, community builder, and be elected as a Ward 4 resident. I will be privileged for me. Thank you.
Hitesh. Adrian Salvatore.
Thank you very much, Shakiba. So my name is Adrian Salvatore. I'm an IT manager at a factory, and I also own my own small business in town doing IT services. So my background is very much not political, but I'm very happy to join this world because I love this community. I've chosen Guelph to be my home, and I see a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of great ways that we can work to make Guelph and Ward 4 better. And I want to make sure that we have eyes that are ready to seize those opportunities and do what we need to do to make this city the greatest place it can be. For academics, I went to UAG. That's what brought me to Guelph originally, computer science, as well as a business certificate. So I do have the business background, which I believe is a great leg up to the responsibilities of council. And I look forward to doing the best I can to make Guelph the greatest community it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin Van Dale.
Thank you. My name's Justin. I was born in Southern Ontario near Lake Erie, more familiar towards Long Point on a farm. In 2006, I decided to come to the University of Guelph and study history, and I've been a resident here ever since. I've lived in the West End since 2009, so it'll be about 13 years this week. In 2020, when everyone was getting thrown a curveball, I was also thrown one, and I decided to start my own business right at the height of the pandemic, which I've been able to turn into something quite successful through hard work and determination, and being able to promote other people who needed work at the time. That was a big part of why I wanted to do it. A big reason I think you should vote for me here in the Ward 4 is because I am somebody who has lived here long enough to see a lot of the changes we go through. And throughout the years, we are given a lot of promises about how we can grow and grow sustainably. And I don't believe that, in the end, that my generation and the people like me are being represented properly. And that's what I really want to bring to the table.
Thank you, Justin. So we're now going to get into some of the questions we'd like to pose each of you. A friendly reminder to be mindful of the time. You'll have 1 minute to answer, and we'll be going through a rotating basis here. So first, a relatively easy one. Curious from all of you, what have you been hearing when you're knocking on doors, speaking with constituents in your ward? We'll start with Linda.
Thank you, Shakiba. I have the privilege of doing a lot of community-based work. And so the word that I would say I hear from people is Alberta is calling. And I put that out there as a call that I hear from young and elder people as well about affordability. And that seems to be the catchphrase even today with people that are finding affordability impossible in the city of Guelph. And this isn't a new thing. It's been over time. And so it's all encompassing. When you deconstruct it, it's housing, it's transportation, it's food, it's clothing for kids. We just finished back to school support. Affordability is what I am hearing in all of those aspects as a #1 concern for families: gas prices, energy, and so on. So yes, and I think for us as a city, Alberta is calling is a big concern.
Thanks, Linda. Brendan, what have you been hearing?
Yeah, I'm going to go off of affordability. I think everyone is hearing affordability. It doesn't matter where you live in the city. There's a whole number of reasons that Linda just outlined, so I'm not going to go over those, but I'm going to go on a bit of a different direction. And something that I've heard over and over again is people feel like Ward 4 has been forgotten in the city. We don't have trails that connect to the rest of the city. We don't have a big one for families around here is we don't have a splash pad. Our parks are lacking with relativity to the rest of the city. They don't feel like they have a strong voice that's proactively engaging them. We don't have a community newsletter, community days. So the big one that I've heard is affordability number one, but just a forgotten aspect of community in Ward 4. So that's been a big one that I've heard.
Thanks. Hitesh, what have you been hearing from constituents in Ward 4?
During the door knocking, I have heard lots of things. Definitely the affordability is the number one issue for the people because they have to pay so much tax and rent cost is going higher and higher. Top of that one, and some of the issues that I'm seeing is that lots of people have raised the concern for the speeding on the residential streets because they're thinking that people are speeding so much and they're looking for the kid safeties. So I have heard those issues, and as well as some people complaining for the bus shelters and the public transportations. They have not proper establishment, and there are in the winter time they are facing a lots of hard time to standing in a this open bus stops. It's kind of hard for them. But overall, I have heard is affordability is the number one issue for everybody in Ward 4 so far.
Thank you. Adrian, how about you?
So the same as my colleagues here, it is affordability, affordability, affordability. I think that's the first thing on everybody's mind, and that's paramount. We need to address that in our community. Housing costs are high, property taxes are high, renting is crazy. It's all across the board. So that's the first thing everybody's bringing up to me. But what I like to hear about the most is the little things too. I talked to a couple of constituents who had transit concerns. The bus is too far away. And I love when we can see something like the transit plan that's coming in the next few years is going to address it. Those sort of little concerns that we can drastically change somebody's life by moving a bus stop, by changing a roadscape, something like that. Those are the concerns I'm hearing a lot, and that's what I like to speak to residents about.
Thanks, Adrian. We're going to be talking about transit shortly. And next is Christine.
Definitely number one is affordability with respect to almost everything, but the high taxes and the new council, that'll be one of the first things that they will address is the budget, the 2023 budget. Also, there's a lot of complaints with respect to speeding and in the neighborhood. So what council did for, which is taking place now, 2022, is 48 neighborhoods. They'll have the speed limit dropped by 10K. And also in 2023, you'll see automated speed enforcement. Those are the speed cameras. And so trying to change people's behavior, issuing and receiving a ticket, that typically works. And some of the red light cameras have already been in place for a while. The other thing that I'm hearing quite a bit from the residents is about the library. They say people are saying it's a waste of money that is being spent on building a new library. And again, the new term of council, if they wish to, they can open up the issue and debate it.
Thank you. Justin, what have you been hearing in the ward?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're hearing is the same. I mean, we are knocking on the same doors after all. But, aside from affordability and housing and the safety of our community, I am gonna change the direction here a little bit and say, a lot of people are quite happy in Ward 4 as a whole when it comes to Guelph. They realize they're very lucky. And I think a lot of people are very scared that with some of the growth, they're going to start to lose some of the characteristics that make Ward 4 great. So a lot of people are asking about some of the development that's going on, in the west end by Costco. And then, you know, a lot of the stuff I'm also hearing is, you know, the mental health. You know, what's the plan for the city and how they plan on, you know, addressing the homelessness and the mental health issues. And then finally, you know, not too often, but I have had a few people say they feel like they're forgotten on this side of town in terms of, you know, always the last road to be plowed or something of that effect. And that's kind of what I'm getting back is that, yes, we are very lucky, but that there are things that definitely need to be done a lot better.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question. And Brendan will be the first to answer. What do you believe is the biggest challenge or opportunity facing City Council in the upcoming term? The biggest challenge or opportunity, Brendan?
So this is right up my world right now. It's development. It was just mentioned. There's for the West End, I think what Justin was referring to is that people around here, it's a lot of single family homes. We're just starting to see our first apartment buildings on the Paisley corridor. There's going to be a big development there by Costco. But it's balancing. We can't not build more homes because that's what's evidently contributing to this affordability crisis. But we need to build smart and responsibly, taking into account, you know, traffic concerns before we build, amenities nearby, bus stops. Where are we going to place them to make sure that these people have access to transit? So it's smart and responsible development. And I think that's an asset of mine. Also with the Clare multi plan coming into place over the next 10 to 15 years. I really believe that smart, responsible development is going to be the biggest challenge. And for me, the biggest opportunity to present myself and my skills on council.
Thanks. Hitesh, what do you think the biggest challenge or opportunity for council will be?
The biggest challenge I have seen so far is sometime I was agreed at some of the colleagues here that we feel that sometimes Ward 4 has forgotten about for so many developments, and I have seen that one, and I feel that biggest challenge I feel that about the road safety and the public transportation. And the challenge for the public transportation, we do have a large industrial area, and the way they have designed the bus routes are little bit off of the track, and it's hard for people to commute. And the biggest opportunity I'm seeing at this point for me, as a counselor, I think that if we can develop an interconnected transportation system or inter-regional transportation system, that was I have mentioned before to so many counselors as well. And that is the biggest opportunity I have. And another biggest challenge that we have to work out the project, the library that many people have raised the concern on, do we need a library or not? That is the biggest challenge in a new term, how we can work out on the projects that will not going to be very expensive, then the burden goes to the residents of the Guelph.
Thank you. Adrian, what do you think the biggest opportunity or challenge is for council?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity is addressing the biggest concern we've heard. It's affordability. You know, per BMA Consulting 2021 report, Guelph, we pay some of the highest property taxes to average incomes. And, you know, we're talking about housing supply issues. We're talking about all those other things. When it comes to any ease of property tax, or at least reducing increases, you know, I've heard people say, oh, we need to find other funding sources. Well, municipal act's kind of clear. We have development charges, user fees, property tax, of course, and accommodation taxes. We don't have a lot of avenues. So expanding our tax base, providing that housing supply people need, and spreading that tax burden around is I think the best way we can address that issue. So it's smart development and affordable development. And of course, we need to make the considerations when we're doing that. It needs to be properly supported by transit, active transportation. It needs to have the infrastructure around it to make it make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, what do you think?
I think one of the biggest issues they're going to have to try and deal with is balancing, you know, everything we need in the city and affordability. You know, like Adrian just outlined, there's not a lot of opportunity for new sources of income for the city to grow. So, you know, they're going to try and grow it off the backs of the residents. But at the same time, you know, we are going through some really tough times, and affordability in every aspect is a big part of what everyone's facing. So I think one of the bigger challenges is going to be providing what we need as a city and not making everybody pay too much for it. And there's a lot we need right now, so we need to make some tough decisions.
Thank you. Christine, what do you think?
Definitely affordability. I already touched on it. The new council, one of the first things they'll have to do is reopen the budget. The 2023 budget has been set at a 5.2% increase, and taxes are part of the affordability issue. And so council needs to work on this. It's a simple majority. You do not need 9 members of council to open. You only require 7, and you need to go through the capital budget and reprioritize in order to bring down the proposed budget request. So that would be the opportunity for council is to bring the tax increase down. And even though 2023 is 5.2%, when you look into the foreseeable future with the forecast, you're ranging from 5 to 6%, and that is not including all the construction costs that are skyrocketing. So for example, South End Community Center budgeted at 80 million. The tender came in at 120 million. That's $40 million over budget. The city doesn't have the money for that. So even with these massive tax increases that are proposed, it still doesn't include those construction costs. So there is a lot of work to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda?
Thank you, Shakira. I would echo everything that everyone else has said, the benefit of being last. But I would say the biggest challenge for council in the next term is affordability, not as an afterthought, but as a decision-making lens. And we talk about the housing as an example. And from my experience, housing, creating more stock without looking at it through the lens of supportive housing, affordable housing, or not-for-profit housing, throughout that whole system, tacking on is not going to address that issue. The other one that I think is on the plate for City Council on the commitments is climate change. And no one's raised that. And I do feel that that is a very serious consideration moving forward in the next term.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. It was touched on by some of you. As you may know, in the past term of council, the Transportation Master Plan was approved, which outlines updated mode shared targets. So for example, the municipality has set transit use to increase by 10% by 2051. What do you think it will take to achieve this increased usage and to ensure transit is accessible and affordable? Hitesh, we start with you.
Well, I haven't had a chance to review the whole master plan for the transportation, but it sounds promising, and there is a way that we can reach that. We can encourage people to use more public transportation and reduce the road traffic. That will help us to reduce the carbon emission. And there are certain things that I like to see that I mentioned before, that interregional transportation system or the transportation system for the students that will be easily accessible to the people.
Thank you. Adrian, how do you think we should increase usage and ensure accessibility and affordability?
Well, I want to cover just a couple parts of the transportation master plan because I do like what I'm seeing. I think we're going in the right direction. One of the big components in my mind is the cycling and active transportation network component. I know right now our goal is, I believe, 10% by active transportation modes by 2041, I believe. So those sort of things to support that, we need to be connected to the rest of the city. Everybody else has identified that too. In Ward 4, we're in a little bit of an island going over the Hanlon. So that sort of focus to actually make these active transportation network more usable. When it comes to the traditional transit bus, what I've seen in the 10-year transit plan, I like a lot. Every time a resident's raised a concern to me about them being too far from a bus stop, not able to use transit right now because it's 1.2 kilometers to walk there, it's already been addressed. So I'd like to, work to implement that where it makes sense, continue consulting with residents, and make transit a viable option for them. Thanks.
Thank you. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with Adrian there. You know, the idea of building out our cycling infrastructure is a great idea. You know, we are way out kind of on the outside, and everything we do, we have to cross the Hanlon to get back into the rest of Guelph. So it's really great to kind of see that we're going to be building that out. But also, you know, I was able to look at the master plan, and I really liked that we're in the way we are growing, that it's going to cut down on, you know, for lack of a better word, the transit from and to a bus stop. You know, too many times do I hear from people that, you know, the only reason they might not use the bus is because it takes too long, or it doesn't bring them exactly where they need to be. For example, just as a test, I hopped onto a bus where I live, and I live within about a 3-minute drive from 3 grocery stores. And I was able to get to all the grocery stores, and the fastest way was 25 minutes. And each time I had to walk about an additional 5 to 7 minutes. In one case, a grocery store took me 50 minutes to get back from. So I think, you know, for people to really use these things, they have to know they aren't planning out a whole afternoon or morning just to do, you know, the basics like get groceries. So I'm really hoping to see that our new plan addresses a lot more of that, and that, you know, moving forward, we can continue to talk with residents.
Thanks,
and
Justin.
close that gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, what are your thoughts on achieving those modal shift targets?
I think there's some really good points in the plan. So for example, the primary routes or the main corridors, that's where you're putting more buses, so where the population and the high density is. And that also speaks to frequency. You put more buses on, and it's more timely. For people who are not on a primary route, you can always now use the on-demand, and I'm actually hearing really good things about using on-demand. And the other thing that's part of the plan is in the future is to have the designated bus lanes. And I think that's going to be positive and make that modal shift so that more people will use transit. The other thing that I think is really good is that I never ever liked bike lanes on the arterial roadways. And so now the planning is to have separated bike lanes. So I think that's going to help with the modal shift as well, or they can be multi-use paths. But even having that separation from the arterial roadway, I think will help people decide to maybe get on their bike or use transit instead of their vehicle.
Thank you. Linda, what are your thoughts?
Thank you. As a resident and community member, I had input into this plan, so I'm happy with the plan. And what I'm not happy with, and I would like to see, and I'd like to advocate in the next term of office, is the inclusion of some of our partners, such as the school boards in transportation planning. And so it is a conversation at the beginning of what are your transportation needs. Wearing my school board hat, you know, students in the south end of the city of Guelph want access to the International Baccalaureate program downtown Guelph. And if we were to take the model, and I've already discussed this with the mayor many years ago, of Limestone District School Board, you are increasing ridership of the buses to the benefit of students as well as residents, creating an economic model that is sustainable for the benefit of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan, your thoughts? And you're muted, Brendan.
Sorry. One thing Christine just mentioned, but it's been brought up to me multiple times in the past, I'm happy to see it, is the separated bike lanes. There's a lot of families over here, and I know talking to them that it's really, people don't necessarily feel safe to bring their children out and biking around these streets. So actually separating out some bike lanes, I think will actually increase it. The other part of it is something that, to touch on what Justin said, is focusing on the bus routes and where it makes sense to bring people. We have a great population in Ward 4 that works over in the industrial ward. So focusing on getting these people to work where they work and not making them walk, as well as getting to a grocery store, and not having to spend 25 minutes to an hour to get there. So those are the two big things for me that I'd like to see, but would like to see some more research done and to continue to improve that.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next question, which is a challenge that communities across the province and country are facing. And I'm curious what you believe the role of the municipality is in addressing homelessness, mental health, and addictions in our community. So what's the role the municipality ought to play? Adrian, we're starting with you.
Great, thank you. So I think that the municipality has a really big role to play when it comes to homelessness, addiction, and mental health. And I see a lot of those issues as interrelated, and I think it's important that we focus on the roots of the problem and not just try to band-aid it. When it comes to homelessness, one of the things we know is that as the share people spend on their rent compared to their income goes up, homelessness increases. So having affordable and available rentals is a really big part of the equation. Affordable housing, of course, we need to support our not-for-profit housing starts, our affordable housing, and that plays a big role as well. And when it comes to the other side, mental health and addictions, I've talked to a lot of people at the door about this, and I think the common theme is what we're doing isn't working. We need to focus on finding new solutions to help people and to provide a pathway to recovery and a pathway out of homelessness.
Thank you. Justin, what are your thoughts on the role of the municipality on these issues?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, a lot of our hands are tied when it comes to certain aspects with the province. But I mean, as far as municipality can go, we need to be doing more to reach some of these individuals. Homelessness and mental health are not always connected. As had pointed out to me while talking to a resident in Ward 4, that, you know, her issue is that too many times it is connected to mental health. But one thing we need to do is really break it down and look at, you know, the reasons why we have the homelessness, why they're homeless, and fixing those issues. And then working into the mental health. Obviously, we need more resources, and we could be doing more. You know, there's a lot of really good programs out of Wellington with the Here 24/7, the crisis line, where they're sending out, you know, mental health with police officers. And I think, you know, building up those sorts of supports would really go a long ways.
Thank you. Christine, what are your thoughts on the role of the municipality?
Well, unfortunately, mental health and addiction falls under the umbrella of the province. However, in saying that, many times we as a municipality do advocate to the ministry for help, whether it's for the impact workers that deal with our police officers, because those people help with the mental health issues. The homelessness, some people say we don't do enough. However, this last term of council, we've had planning applications. There's been Grace Gardens, the Kindle project, which is off of Dawson and Willow. Also, the project between the city and the county is in the Delhi neighborhood, very close to the Guelph General Hospital. And you have not only just affordable housing, but also supportive housing. So Grace Gardens, for example, is supportive housing. And with that, you also have at the facility, you have the wraparound supports for the homelessness, because it's not enough just to put a roof over someone's head. You have to have the supports there for them as well for it to be successful.
Thank you, Christine. That's
okay.
The minutes up. I'm going to have to pass the mic to Linda. What are your thoughts, Linda?
Thank you, Shakiba. I would echo what Christine was saying, just from my role in the school board. Mental health and addictions, for us in school board, we have a hand in that. But mental health from municipal level, it would be the advocacy. And I think I stated it early, is using the equity lens when it comes to programs and services, and asking the question whether it's police services and so on, about mental health and addictions and how those services are provided. And I would agree with Christina around the homeless issue. There is homelessness in Guelph, and there is homelessness in Ward 4 as well. And that continuum of housing is, again, not just creating new housing for single families and so on, but also that continuum supportive housing with all those supports for families.
Thank you. Brendan, what are your thoughts?
So for homelessness, I think the one thing that hasn't been brought up, and I read this the other day, and even talking to people, the term that I read was invisible homelessness. People that are working full-time jobs are getting to the point where they're talking about how eventually they might have to live out of their car. So the biggest thing that we can do as a city is to make sure that we're providing an affordable city to live in, keeping property taxes down. On the other side of it, as far as supporting mental health and addictions and how that is leading to homelessness, I think Christine brought it up and Linda echoed it, but the supportive housing part of it, making sure that we're allowing different areas in town to have zoning provisions for supportive housing, and working with both Wellington County as well as the province to advocate for those dollars. I know working with private companies such as Skyline, they propose a development for affordable housing, something like that, but with supportive housing, I think is a big opportunity as well.
Thank you. Finally, Hitesh, what do you believe the municipality's role should be in addressing these challenges?
Well, as a municipality, I have heard this question from so many people, and I have write up something for myself to understand the issues, and I have some suggestions to it. So throughout various charities, I have collaborated with many within the pandemic, and I have noticed the lack of funding and the social services, those that are for homeless. One way to decrease homelessness within the city is provide to support with the properly funded mental health, addiction prevention, and social housing. With all three being properly funded, people will part of the program can meet the social worker who can provide ideas and advice of what they can do next, and they will have a chance to improve their education and find stable employment and recover safely, knowing their future will change. Because I believe that no one born homeless. So it's all about how we can create more affordability, because we can see the invisible homelessness, as Justin mentioned before too.
Thank you. This is our final question, and it's about growth. As you have all touched on this, growth, Guelph is mandated to grow by about 60,000 people in the next 30 years. And there are two ways to grow: up with density and out with land annexation. And considering the considerable growth in Ward 4, we're curious, how do you believe the city should meet these growth targets? Justin, we start with you.
Sorry about that. I had a hard time finding the mute button. So, you know, I came from a farm, and I would love everyone to have that sort of land to live on. Unfortunately, that's not the reality we live in. You know, some of these high density condos and apartment buildings that are going up aren't the worst way of living, and that's kind of the way we have to start going. The only thing I'd really like to see is planning around it in terms of, you know, the infrastructure, making sure we're not just throwing a condo on an empty intersection. I want to make sure we are building it in a smart area, keeping it condensed without, you know, really affecting much change in the neighborhoods, but at the same time, making sure the infrastructure and all our growth is around it. Other things we really need to do is start thinking about, you know, some of the out of the box ideas in terms of, you know, maybe allowing for mini home communities, something of that, where you can actually own a home and maybe even a little bit of land to actually go outside in. You know, other things we can do is, you know, have some sort of, you know, rental tax rebates for people who are renting their homes. If they are renting it under, you know, market value, maybe they can receive some sort of rebate that way. Just kind of just really thinking more outside the box.
Thanks, Justin. Christine, what do you think the city needs to do to meet these growth targets?
Well, the city already has the growth plan, and you're absolutely correct. It's mandated by the province. The province tells you the time and the targets, and the city puts the plan together. So we've already done that. I suppose one of my issues that I do have, because I do agree if you're going to have the height to match the the density, and again, with the province, it's all about density, 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 is to have the height on your major corridors. However, one issue that I had is the interface between the county and the city. So I'll give you an example. It's 361 Whitelaw, where you have a sloped land that goes up a hill. And then on top of that, you put, you know, an 8 to 10 story apartment building on it. I don't think that's proper. And I don't think that's really good urban design planning. And that's one of the reasons why council voted against that application. But here's an example. So the developer takes it to the provincial appeal process and they win. So even though it's against some of our policies, even though it won't look appropriate once you see it built, it doesn't matter because the province steps in and says, no, you can go ahead and build it anyway. So it becomes very frustrating for a council who would like to do, you know, and make changes within the planning application and then turn it down, and then the province then reverses it. So that's where my frustration lies.
Linda, what are your thoughts on how we should meet growth targets?
Thank you. I wasn't sure if it was an up or out question. So I am going to speak on behalf of lots of families along the Westwood corridor who live up. And that I think that this planning approach needs to have a focus on livable neighborhoods and how is this livable? Families who live in high rises complain that the children have no place for bikes, for sleds. They have no place to grow gardens. And when we talk about community resilience during the pandemic, have had no ability to grow food around food insecurity. I'm glad also that Christine mentioned the white law, because that is a huge problem, 361, around the process there. And I think the role for the municipality, for municipal government, is to bring the parties together to try to mediate the conversations around the development needs, the housing needs, and site plan development that is respectful of the needs of the community and the residents immediately and going forward in a sustainable way. So the answer is there is no, I think it has to be customized for each community in each area. Claire Maltby is a perfect example of a community conversation and advocacy.
Thank you. Brendan, what are your thoughts on meeting growth targets?
I agree. The biggest way to grow is up. We're surrounded by the green belt. We only have so much land to grow on. I think in the West End specifically, we don't have any major corridors like Gordon. We have Paisley, and that's kind of the major corridor that we've been building on. We don't want to see high rises going up in residential neighborhoods. It just wouldn't make sense. I think there's a lot of other opportunities. One idea that I really like is stacked townhouses, where it doesn't look out of the norm for a neighborhood, but you can have 3 units basically in what looks like one house type thing or one townhouse. So looking at alternative means of development that aren't necessarily high rises, but also aren't just single family homes, I think is a big one. The other part of it is basement apartments. I've done many of them. The process going through with the city is very hard, and I would like to work with staff to streamline that process and make it very easy for people to create legal apartments for people to live in safely and affordably.
Hitesh, what are your thoughts on our growth targets?
Well, Guelph is growing exceptionally fast. And as I agreed with the Justine that, you know, we don't want to see so many high-rise buildings will be built up because it doesn't make any sense. And as Christine mentioned, and Linda also mentioned that the people who lives in high-rise, the kids are missing out because they don't have enough room for the play, or they cannot go for biking, and they have lots of restrictions. So we have to focus on building a small community and a safer community with the sustainable growth. So I would like to see that we have more a stacked home or a small space developed instead of the building large houses or the single homes.
Thank you, Hitesh. Adrian, what are your thoughts on how we should meet our growth targets?
Thank you. Yeah, for 208,000 people by 2051. And when it comes to growing out, I think a lot of the parties, even our hands are a little tied. The province has a objective about the density. And so I do think we need to work with rather than butt heads against them. When we do that, we see 361 white law, and then the province comes down and turns around the decision on council. I don't think that's right. Context is key. We do need to be supportive of more densification and intensification, and gentle density is a great way to do that, where we have a gradual buildup from a single family home area into stacked towns, into some more triplexes, something like that, into 5-overs, and then density where it makes sense along the corridors where it's properly serviced by infrastructure around it. And that is something we need to focus on, because our density corridor on Paisley could be much better served by active transportation and transit. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is now the opportunity for you to provide some closing remarks. So we'll hear the remarks in reverse order from the openings. Again, you have 30 seconds. Please be mindful of the time. Justin, we start with you.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everyone else for participating. It's been a great talk here. And we've been able to see a lot of great ideas. One thing that really kind of sticks out is that we are obviously talking to the same people in terms of what we're hearing are the issues. Going forward, I want to make sure that it is clear that, voting for me, I will be the voice that this ward needs. I will stand up to anybody that, wants to push back on our needs and be loud and clear. There are a lot of things we need to accomplish, and hopefully voting for me, we can get those done.
Thank you. Adrian?
So first, thank you to you folks at the Chamber for putting this on. It's great to have this civic engagement opportunity. And thanks to all of my colleagues here who participated. A vote for me is a vote for taking advantage of the opportunities we have coming. Growth is going to happen. Our city is growing. We need to manage it well, and we need to take those opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you. Hitesh?
Thank you. Thank you for the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and thank you, Shani, for moderating this conversation. And it was nice to meet with all of the folks that here, and it was a great moment for me as well. And to vote for me means I'm looking to be more trusted leadership for the Ward 4, and looking forward for the more development and more sustainable growth for the Ward 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan?
Thank you, Shakiba, and thanks to the Guelph Chamber for putting this on, and to all my colleagues for showing up today and sharing your thoughts. It's really great to hear from everyone. And I guess the biggest thing for me is voting for me, you're going to get proactive engagement. I've been hearing from everyone, like, how did this library vote get through? And not to keep harping on the library, I think it's just like the biggest point of affordability. And people are like, why did I not get engaged with before this happened? Why did everyone vote for it? And I think it's because we don't see a lot of proactive engagement on council. So a vote for me would be proactive engagement, and to make sure that Ward 4 doesn't feel forgotten on council anymore.
Thank you. Linda?
Sorry, I lost my cursor. Yeah, I would echo what everyone else has said. Shakiba, thank you very much to the Chamber for organizing this. I think a vote for me brings on the ground real experience in organizing people, plain languaging what some of the issues are. And a recent example is the Metrolinx transformer experience, where families were just blindsided by what was happening. And so I have the engagement skills and leadership skills proven in the community, and I would like to continue that and bring accountability to Ward 4 and those opportunities to have a say in things like the budget and other master plans where the community has not had those opportunities. Thank you again.
Thank you. And Christine?
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Moderator. My vision for Guelph now and into the future is a safe and affordable city that is environmentally and fiscally sustainable. With my council experience, a business background, and a good rapport with city staff, I'm able to help our residents and make well-informed decisions. It's been a privilege in the past 8 years to represent the constituents of Ward 4, and I'm Christine Billings, and I ask for your vote on October 24th. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you to all of you candidates for joining us today and putting your name forward during this election. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. A friendly reminder that Election Day is on Monday, October 24th. And for more information about candidates and where to go vote, please go to vote.guelph.ca.